Well, former FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried now facing charges for defrauding investors. House Financial Services Committee Chair Maxine Waters weighing in on his arrest earlier today. Take a listen.
Unfortunately, the timing of his arrest denies the public the opportunity to get the answers they deserve. Rest assured that this committee will not stop until we uncover the full truth behind the collapse of FTX.
Here to weigh in is the Southern District of New York's former assistant state attorney and former Watergate special prosecutor, Nick Ackerman. Nick, good to talk to you. Let's lay out the charges right here. The federal indictment that was unsealed this morning pointing to 8 counts tied to wire and securities fraud, also a conspiracy to defraud the U.S., violate campaign finance laws. And yet, in that House hearing, we heard John Ray talk about how little documentation there was available within the company. So how much harder is a case like this to prosecute when you don't have that paper trail?
Oh, I'm sure the government has some of that. But basically, the indictment comes down to not sloppy accounting or not maintaining records properly. What it comes down to is lying and stealing, basically. What the indictment charges is that Sam Bankman-Fried lied to the investors at FTX. He lied to the customers at FTX. And he lied to the lenders of Alameda, which was his private company, where he basically moved monies around between FTX and Alameda. That's what this comes down to. And certainly, I believe the government has the paperwork. It's just that if you had Sam Bankman-Fried even testify before a committee today, all he was going to say was this was sloppy accounting, when in fact this indictment makes it very clear that this was a concerted plan going back some 2 to 3 years, where essentially monies were moved around without any disclosures to any of the customers, to the investors, or to the lenders of even his own private company. So this is a fairly serious charge. I think what we're seeing now is the bare bones of this indictment. It seems pretty clear that there are other people that were involved. He's charged with conspiracy. The indictment charges people known and unknown. I think we're going to see a superseding indictment at some point. But certainly this indictment is sufficient to arrest him and have him indicted and sent from the Bahamas back to the Southern District of New York, where he will stand trial. So bottom line, this, whatever documentation is out there, the government they have the statements, the false statements that he made to the investors, the customers, et cetera. And on top of it all, they've also charged him with campaign violations for essentially donating to campaigns without disclosing the true source of those campaign donations.
And Nick, as with anything that comes to FTX, a lot of rumors were swirling online about why he was arrested before he had a chance to have his public appearance here in front of the committee today. Does it help or hurt SBF in any way by being arrested and not appearing today?
I don't think it really made a difference, because it was pretty obvious to me that if he showed up at the committee and testified today, he would have basically tried to argue that this was just sloppy accounting. He certainly wouldn't have admitted that he lied to customers, that he lied to investors, that he basically moved money around from FTX, a public company, into his private company, and not disclosing any of that to the lenders of his private company. He was not going to admit to that. So I think the arrest saved the company from listening to a lot of bogus testimony today.
Nick, we've got the statement given to Bloomberg from Sam Bankman-Fried's attorney saying essentially that he is reviewing the charges with his legal team, considering all of his legal options. What do those options look like at this point? And can he even fight extradition?
Oh, I don't think the extradition is going to be fought. I think he's going to be extradited. The charges here are serious enough. In terms of his options, he's got really one of two options. Either he pleads guilty, makes a deal with the government, or he goes to trial, which, based on what we know at this point, is just going to be a slow guilty plea. I just don't think, based on this indictment, the way it's laid out, over the time period that's laid out, and the myriad of charges and the people who were defrauded, that he's got much of a chance of being acquitted on these charges.
And I just quickly want to ask you about jurisdiction, because this is considered an entity that's based in the Bahamas. How does that complicate the situation?
Not really too much. I think if you look at the indictment and also what the SEC issued this morning, a huge amount of the money that went into FTX came from U.S. investors. So it really involves U.S. investors and false statements and fraud that was committed within the territorial United States. So I don't see that being an issue at all, based on what I've read from the SEC charges and from the indictment.
We do thank you for breaking all of that down for us. Former SDNY Assistant Attorney and Watergate Special Prosecutor Nick Ackerman, thank you so much for joining us this morning.